At the community health center, Dr. George and the staff immediately tended to Eleanor's dehydration, sunstroke, and rope burns. David stayed by her side, later contacting the local sheriff, Frank, and the district attorney's office. The sheriff's team found the remote location, the ropes, and collected evidence, but they knew the case hinged on Eleanor's testimony. Eleanor's survival was a miracle. Her decision to press charges was a monumental act of courage. This was not merely about property or money. It was about holding her children accountable for attempted murder and elder abuse. After 2 weeks of rest and healing at David and his wife Betty's home, a haven of quiet routine, shared meals, and genuine family love, Eleanor was ready to face the legal process. The DA, Richard, met with her to record a full statement. Over 3 grueling hours, Eleanor recounted every agonizing detail: the rushed phone call, the distant eyes in the car, the terrifying drive into the desolate land, and Trevor and Brenda's cold pronouncements about her being useless and their need for the house money. Her voice broke as she described the final, heartless departure of the black car. "I thought I was going to die there, abandoned by my own children," she whispered. Her testimony, combined with David's rescue account and the physical evidence, built a formidable case. Trevor and Brenda were quickly located and arrested. They were shocked. They had believed Eleanor would be a forgotten casualty in the wilderness. However, their shock did not lead to repentance, but to a desperate, cold calculation. They hired a high-powered defense attorney who immediately launched a media campaign to discredit Eleanor. Their false narrative was a masterpiece of deceit. They claimed Eleanor suffered from advanced dementia and was prone to violent episodes. They hadn't abandoned her. They had simply been taking her to a remote, quiet place to calm her down for a transfer to a specialized medical facility, only to be delayed on their way back for help. They insisted they loved her and were only trying to manage her affairs responsibly, painting themselves as grieving, selfless children, victims of their mother's unpredictable illness. The defense's strategy was designed to turn the case into a family dispute over an ill elderly woman rather than an act of attempted murder for financial gain. Eleanor and the Miller family followed the news nervously, but Betty's words of reassurance echoed in the quiet house. The truth always prevails. It may take time, but in the end, the truth always comes to light. Eleanor tried to hold on to that hope as the day of the trial finally arrived, knowing she would soon have to face her children's calculated lies in open court. The courtroom was packed, the eyes of the public fixed on the elderly woman and the 2 well-dressed siblings who claimed she was mentally ill. When Trevor took the stand, his performance was Oscar-worthy, complete with tears and a cracking voice. But the district attorney was ready to expose the truth, armed with financial documents that would reveal the chilling depth of the Miller children's desperation. Agnes's betrayal was a profound, deep wound, far more excruciating than the blistering sun that began to scorch her exposed skin. The relentless sun ascended, transforming the thin desert air into a suffocating, heavy furnace. Her throat was a dry, aching void. The lack of water became a physical, maddening obsession. And she felt the edges of her vision turn hazy as she slipped into and out of awareness. Memories flashed through her mind: the feel of George's hand, the small, grasping fingers of her newborn children, only to be violently displaced by the horrifying reality that the people she had nurtured had become the architects of her death. The silence was absolute, save for the dry, scraping noise of the desert wind and, more chillingly, the shadow of a large, dark bird circling high above, patiently waiting.
She closed her eyes, preparing to surrender to the darkness, convinced her cruel death would go unnoticed. Just as the will to fight finally drained away, a faint, rhythmic sound broke through the oppressive silence, the unmistakable chug of an engine laboring across rough terrain. Agnes strained to open her eyes. Through her blurred, dry vision, she saw a vehicle approaching. Not the sleek, anonymous sedan of her children, but an old, beat-up, dusty brown Ford Bronco. Her heart slammed a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Was this real? Would they see her? Miraculously, the Bronco slowed, the driver stopping the vehicle to observe the derelict tower. And a man emerged, Elias Vance, a retired park ranger, his face rugged and his eyes trained from decades spent policing the vast desert territory. He was dressed in khaki shorts and a sun-faded shirt. His initial curiosity turned instantly to shock and utter revulsion when he spotted the figure tied to the post. "My God, ma'am, are you all right? Who in heaven's name did this to you?" Elias sprinted toward her, his strong, practiced hands working swiftly and gently to cut through the thick plastic ties. The moment the restraint snapped, Agnes tumbled forward, but Elias caught her, supporting her frail weight. He carefully carried her to the front seat of his truck, reclined the seat, and gently pressed a canteen of cool water to her lips. The water was a sacred, life-saving tonic. As she slowly began to recover, Elias asked again, his voice tight with controlled anger. Was it bandits? Some maniacs? In that moment of absolute security, the full scope of her pain and betrayal erupted. "My children!" She choked out. Hot tears of both agony and relief traced clean paths through the dust on her cheeks. It was my own 2 children, Philip and Sarah. Elias stood motionless for a long moment, his face hardening with a quiet, palpable rage. That is the lowest form of evil. To betray your own mother for money? That is unforgivable. Elias, a man with a deep, quiet reverence for family, was utterly appalled. He demonstrated more human decency than her own flesh and blood. He drove her immediately to the nearest regional clinic, assuring her with an unwavering promise. "The important thing is your survival, Agnes. But what they did will not stand. They will face justice for this." Agnes was safe, but her nightmare had only just begun. Her decision to involve the authorities was not just an act of survival, but a declaration of war against the cold, calculated greed of her offspring. However, as Philip and Sarah learned of her rescue, they would quickly construct a masterful, deceitful counter-narrative, painting Agnes as unstable and confused. Could Agnes's brutal truth hold up against a mountain of financial lies and a brilliant defense attorney? At the regional health clinic, Dr. Peterson and his team immediately stabilized Agnes, treating her severe dehydration, sunstroke, and the nasty ligature marks on her wrists. Elias stayed with her, later contacting the county sheriff, Officer Reed, and the district attorney's office. The sheriff's investigators visited the remote desert location, collecting the zip ties and finding tire tracks, but they knew the strength of the case rested entirely on Agnes's coherent testimony. Agnes's survival was a miracle of timing. Her resolve to prosecute was an immense act of courage. This went far beyond a dispute over property. It was a charge of attempted murder and severe elder abuse. After 2 weeks of quiet recovery at Elias and his wife Carol's secluded desert home, a warm haven of simple, loving routine and genuine care, Agnes was ready to face the legal process. The DA, Marcus Wells, met with her to take a comprehensive recorded statement. Over 3 painful hours, Agnes recounted every agonizing detail. The rushed, cold phone call, the unsettling silence in the car, the terrifying drive into the desolate land, and Philip and Sarah's chilling statements about her being a financial burden and their absolute need for the house money. Her voice broke only when she described the final, heartless disappearance of the charcoal sedan. "I truly thought I was going to be baked alive out there, abandoned by my own blood," she confessed. Her detailed account, combined with Elias's heroic rescue testimony and the physical evidence of the binding site, solidified the attempted murder charge. Philip and Sarah were located in a neighboring state and arrested without incident. They were initially stunned. They had been certain Agnes would be a forgotten casualty of the harsh desert. However, their shock quickly gave way to a desperate, cold-blooded defense strategy. They retained a notoriously aggressive defense counsel who immediately launched a campaign to smear Agnes's character in the press. Their fabricated narrative was a masterpiece of cold deceit. They claimed Agnes was suffering from advanced senile dementia and paranoia, often experiencing delusions and becoming violent. They insisted they had not abandoned her. They had been carefully transporting her to a remote, quiet location to calm her for an imminent transfer to an exclusive specialized care facility, only to suffer a critical vehicle breakdown on their return to civilization. They maintained their innocence, portraying themselves as heartbroken, selfless children, victims of their mother's debilitating mental decline and the subsequent false accusations. The defense's core strategy was to transform the case from a clear-cut attempted murder into a messy, pathetic family dispute over a mentally ill elderly woman. Agnes and the Vance family followed the media coverage with growing apprehension, but Carol's firm, gentle voice provided constant reassurance. "The truth is a hard thing to bury, Agnes. It always resurfaces." Agnes clung to that hope as the highly anticipated day of the trial finally arrived, knowing she would soon have to confront the icy, practiced lies of her children under the bright lights of the courtroom. The courtroom became a theater of cruelty, with all eyes on the fragile mother and the 2 impeccably dressed siblings claiming mental illness. When Philip took the stand, his performance was stunningly convincing, full of fake tears and practiced remorse. But DA Wells was ready to strike, armed with irrefutable financial documents that would reveal the chilling, desperate motive of the children. Would a mountain of hidden debt be enough to completely shatter Philip and Sarah's calculated lie? Or could they walk free, leaving Agnes to carry the trauma of her betrayal alone?
The trial commenced, instantly becoming a powerful battle between Agnes's raw, agonizing truth and her children's cold, calculated greed. The district attorney, Marcus Wells, began with a crushing opening statement, labeling the crime a horrific act of patricide driven by the basest avarice and a fundamental violation of the filial bond. He detailed Agnes's life of quiet generosity, creating a stark contrast with the defendants, who sat stone-faced, radiating an air of injured innocence. The centerpiece of the defense's strategy was Philip's testimony. He executed his lie with practiced brilliance, tearfully describing his devotion to his mother, his distress over her declining mental state, and the terrible, panicked error of briefly restraining her while he supposedly went to find help in the desert. He cried while describing the pain of his false arrest, swearing he would never harm the woman who gave him life. But D.A. Wells was meticulous. During a devastating cross-examination, he surgically demolished the illusion of the dutiful son. He introduced a series of banking and property records that exposed Philip and Sarah's overwhelming personal and business debts, a financial abyss so deep that they were days away from losing everything. The house was not an asset for Agnes's care, it was a desperate final parachute. As the DA relentlessly pressed him on the numbers, Philip's composure finally fractured, his polished facade dissolving into panicked, raw emotion, revealing the desperate criminal beneath the tailored suit. When Agnes finally took the stand, the courtroom fell into profound silence. She recounted the events one final time, her voice steady and clear, now devoid of tears, but filled with the quiet, devastating finality of a mother severing an impossible bond. She looked directly at Philip and Sarah, and in that gaze she found a hard-won peace. Her closing words were not a plea for justice, but a declaration of the end of her own suffering. The jury deliberated for a remarkably short time, just over 3 hours. The clerk read the verdict: guilty on all counts, including attempted murder and elder abuse. Philip and Sarah, their last shreds of deceit torn away, were immediately taken into custody. As the two ungrateful children were led away, Agnes felt not triumphant satisfaction, but a profound, quiet sense of closure, the pain of a terrible loss, tempered by the solid certainty of justice served. In the ensuing weeks, Agnes was celebrated in Elias and Carol's community. They held a small ceremony, declaring her an honorary resident, praising her strength and resilience. Agnes eventually sold her old Scottsdale house, using the money not for herself, but to establish the Agnes Memorial Fund to protect other vulnerable elderly adults from financial predators, ensuring her ordeal would be transformed into a legacy of prevention and kindness. She began a new life, surrounded by the genuine, quiet loyalty of the Vance family and their loving community, recognizing that she had indeed lost 2 children, but found an entire, loving family. Agnes's story is a powerful testament that true family is not defined by DNA, but by the courage to do what is right and the capacity to love unconditionally. Her biological children chose unforgivable greed and earned a prison sentence. Agnes chose resilience, self-respect, and found a profound, fulfilling happiness in a new, chosen family. As you reflect on her painful journey, consider this timeless truth. When facing the ultimate betrayal, choosing justice is not revenge, it is the fundamental choice to save yourself. The roar of the guilty verdict had faded, but the silence that followed in Agnes's life was more profound than the desert quiet. She had won the legal battle, but the victory was soaked in the bitter sorrow of having condemned her own children. The first few weeks were a confusing mix of relief and crushing grief. The memory of Philip and Sarah's faces, stripped of their lies and contorted in rage as they were led away, was a haunting image. Yet the physical ties were broken, and Agnes began to breathe a truly free breath for the first time in months. She realized the ultimate betrayal had paradoxically set her free from years of emotional manipulation and fear. Her refuge in the home of Elias and Carol Vance proved to be the anchor she desperately needed. Their home was not luxurious, but it was rich in the kind of honest love and routine her life had long lacked.
Agnes was no longer the fragile victim. She was a participant in a new family. She helped Carol with the gardening, learning the resilience of the desert flora, and she spent quiet evenings listening to Elias recount his adventures as a ranger. This chosen family healed her wounds with kindness, patience, and unwavering loyalty. They were a testament to the truth that kinship is not defined by blood, but by commitment. The proceeds from the sale of her Scottsdale house, now firmly out of Philip and Sarah's grasping hands, became the foundation for her enduring legacy, the Agnes Resilience Fund. It was more than a simple charity. It was a permanent, nonprofit organization dedicated to providing immediate legal and financial aid to elderly victims of familial abuse, ensuring they never had to face their abusers alone or fear homelessness. She used her own traumatic story as the fund's rallying cry, often speaking at local events. "They meant it for evil," she would tell the audiences, "but God used their cruelty to expand my heart and build something good." Her pain had been channeled into purpose. In her final years, Agnes looked out over the vast, shimmering desert from Elias and Carol's porch, finding profound peace in the stark beauty of the Arizona landscape. She had lost 2 children to their own avarice and malice, but she had gained a devoted, loving family, a respected role in a new community, and the knowledge that her suffering would protect countless others. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a beacon. She had rebuilt her life from the ashes of betrayal and found a happiness that no amount of money could buy and no prison sentence could take away. As she often shared with those who asked for her wisdom, she summed up the journey in a profound, quiet truth. "I lost 2 children, but I found an entire family."